So when we're talking about more than half the country are poor, more than half the country are living in poverty, over half the country can't afford a $500 emergency, we are talking about a systemic problem, not an individual problem. It's statistically impossible for it to be an individual outcome. It is systemic.
I'm a homeless advocate. I work in a homeless shelter. Okay, so first of all, it takes a lot to qualify to be in the shelter. Yeah. You can't just be in there. Like you have to prove on paper that you cannot afford to get by, that there's no other way.
Which is really fun to go through, I'm sure.
Right. Oh my God. It's awesome. Yeah. And, but there are people who are living there who are working minimum wage. Who are living, working 40 hours a week. So they're not lazy. Imagine being in that situation where you are constantly being judged as if you have some type of moral failing because you don't have the same financial situation as someone else.
Don't aspire to be a dick. You have to question the motives. You have to understand. That means you have to give a shit. And that's one of the hardest things for people to do in this country, giving a shit.
Yeah. It's serious lack of empathy, I have to say that.
Yeah.
It's pretty sad. As far as poverty is concerned, 1979 or 1980, it was when Reagan was elected, or when he was running, he started talking about the welfare queen, This kind of became this trope of, people who are on welfare, that they're, you hear it resonating still today. Oh, well, they have that iPhone, or they have that phone. Oh,
they have a microwave.
They have a microwave. I know, this like crazy stuff, and you're just like, I don't know how to break that down for you, but just to kind of focus in for a little bit, because I think it's really interesting kind of how this framing is perpetuated, right? And it's interesting because, like, where do we get our news, right? The mainstream media is, I don't get my news from there.
No.
But the majority of people do, right?
Used to.
Who's telling you that? Then we have these media conglomerates who are controlling the narrative. We have the people who are on television who are making, $10,000 a day, to be on TV. Do you think that those people can actually understand? Do you think that, I would hope that they would at least be able to empathize, but they're literally, it's a completely different world.
All right, I love this next story because it shows you how insanely out of touch elite mainstream media hosts are. So Stephanie Ruhle is an MSNBC host. Here she is right here. And take a look at what she tweeted. There's always good news somewhere. A furloughed worker was so in need of cash that she pawned her wedding ring. When the woman's family learned what she'd done, they contacted the pawn shop owner and bought it back for her. Hashtag good news rules at MSNBC. Why on earth would you tweet that as if it's a feel-good story? Why would you do that? Well, I get she's trying to say, like, oh, she got her ring back because her family loves her. Isn't that amazing? If you actually were a journalist, a reporter, somebody who thought about shit and weren't a complete dipshit, what you would realize is the real story there is how insanely fucked up is our system that this poor woman felt like she had to pawn her wedding ring off in order to pay the bills. That's the real story. The real story is, oh my God, the system is so rotten, disgusting, broken, and corrupt that this had to happen to this working person who did nothing wrong. That's the story. How do you miss it? They miss it because she's comfortable. Stephanie Ruhle's comfortable. She makes a tremendous amount of money. She's part of that elite DC insider bubble. And so she can't fucking sympathize with working people. So to her, it's just like, yeah, shit happens. You lost your fucking... You had to pawn off your wedding ring to pay the fucking bills. And then, oh, isn't your family so wonderful? They bought it back for you. Feel good story. Yeah. You know what this reminds me of? And credit to Adam Johnson of Fair, because he's the one who gave it this title. I call it, or he calls it, perseverance porn. So it's the idea that there's a feel-good story of like, I'll give you an example off the top of my head. This mother got a third job in order to pay for a present for her 3 kids. this mother couldn't afford to pay for Christmas presents this year, but she took on a third job in order to make sure that she gives her kids the upbringing that she knows they deserve. And I'm not kidding, they frame it as a feel-good story, or the story about this person doesn't have a car and walks 14 miles to work and home every day. And then, oh, the workers at the place all pulled their money together and got him a used car, and now he can get back and forth. They frame all of these stories as, oh, so unbelievable and amazing. Look at how they persevere by walking 14 miles to work every day, and then the benevolent, people who have more money, they help them out. The real framing in these stories is, holy shit, how fucked up is our system? How fucked up is our economy that this poor mother needs to work 3 jobs to afford Christmas presents? That this poor guy, how fucked up is our lack of public transportation that this poor guy had to walk 14 miles to work every day? Like this, that's the angle of the story that somebody who's not a dumbass and in their own elite, comfortable bubble, that's the angle that a normal person would take. These aren't feel-good stories, man. They expose how fucked up the system is. But when they're unable to see the real perspective of working people. You think that mother's like, it's like when Bush said there was an event and this woman said to George W. Bush, like, I have 3 jobs. And he's like, isn't that great? Uniquely American, isn't it? Like, no! Obviously that person does not want to have 3 jobs. They want to live in a country where if you work 1 job, you make enough money to survive. Jesus Christ, how do we have to explain this to you people? Oh, God damn it. But listen, that's why she gets hired for this position. She's not going to rock the boat. She's not going to question the basis of this system, the fundamentals of this system. She's not going to do a rigorous analysis that goes, hey, maybe we got this whole fucking thing wrong and it's all out of whack. She's never going to do that. That's why she's in that position. That's why Wolf Blitzer is hired by CNN. Because what does Wolf Blitzer do? We saw him. He did it in an interview with Rand Paul. Rand Paul's like, hey, maybe we shouldn't arm Saudi Arabia anymore because they're massacring women and children in Yemen. Wolf Blitzer said in response, I kid you not, what about the jobs and the money for the defense contractors? Did he just... Yeah, he said that. He said that. That's why they're in those positions. Everything will be framed from the perspective of people with power and money. Stephanie Rule's response here, that's the perspective of somebody with power and money. Oh, you had to pawn off your ring to pay the bills? Oh, well, boy, it sure is good that you have a nice family, isn't it? What a feel-good story. Because somebody with money and power is not going to go, oh, whoa, our entire system's fucked up if you felt like you had to pawn off your wedding ring in order to pay the bills. How crazy is that? How fucking crazy is that? What a joke. Of course, she's never going to come across this segment. If she were to come across this segment, she would be massively defensive and act like she didn't do anything wrong. And again, that's why she's in the position she's in, because that is how she would react.
Someone who is making that much money and someone who is making minimum wage on the street or whatever, it's just a completely different, they are lives that don't intersect. They are completely different bubbles, and yet that's where we're getting our news from. I think that has a lot to do with it.
It absolutely does. But the thing I made this video. I wanted to make the case, and I figured the only way to really do it is to lay out where we are, where we actually are. And I made all these different metrics. Poverty was massive among them. The number one thing I mentioned, if you think that America is the greatest country in the world, we are 35th out of 37 in water and sanitation, clean water and sanitation in this country. It's not just Flint. There are several places here in New Jersey. There are several places all over the country. And you have got Nestle buying up aquifers.
That right there alone, water is the building block of life. We are not the greatest country in the world. because of that alone. But that ain't it. America has the highest incarceration rate in the world, ahead of El Salvador, Cuba, Thailand, and Russia. The land of the free locks up more of its people than anyone else in the world. We don't even live up to our values. The youth poverty rate in the United States is the highest in the developed world, with 1/4 of youth living in poverty. 25% of all children in this country live in poverty. In the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, that's a division of the UN, the US ranks 35th out of 37 in terms of inequality. The richest country in the world, and we rank close to the bottom in making sure that everyone gets to share in that prosperity.
This is going to be massive. You know, you think the wars we're fighting over oil are huge? The wars we're going to be fighting over water is going to make that seem fucking quaint in very short order. You know,
it's already happening in other countries.
Yes.
I mean, it's already happening in other places.
This is how Syria happened. You know, we have climate change that turned a lot of their food producing areas into fucking deserts. You know, so a lot of people from those areas moved into the big cities to find jobs, to be able to find ways to be able to care for themselves and their families. And there's just no jobs because to the private sector, cost is labor is a cost. They don't want to hire you. The government's not stepping in to take care of it. So now we've got fucking disquiet. We've got riots. We've got people that want to overthrow the government because clearly the government doesn't give a fuck. It's going to happen here too. But I made this video in the hopes that people would start to understand Donald Trump is your enemy, but he is not why you are unhappy. We have to start paying more attention. And one of the things I said in the video, 4 corporations, it was 5 at the time, it's now 4, own 90% of the media. It used to be 50 in the early 1980s.
Yeah.
Not trying to be nostalgic for what media ever used to be. It was always privately owned.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they always had the origins of media in this country, massively partisan, massively filled with just personal opinion masquerading as news. It was only when we, the people, decided that we really needed to get some fucking common sense and some real verifiable information. And we used our hard-earned dollars to purchase newspapers that gave that to us and shunned newspapers that didn't. And we frequented radio shows and TV shows that gave us that and turned the channel on the ones that didn't.
Mm-hmm.
That's what made journalism an actual real thing in this country. Not because it was mandated. The fairness doctrine only said that we needed to give equal time to both sides. Didn't say how much weight each one had to have.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you still had crossfire for a long time on Fox News after we got rid of the fairness doctrine, but we're talking about an idiot talking to another idiot. You're not getting any real information.
Right.
You watch MSNBC, they'll have their token Republican, you know, surrounded by 5 Democrats, 5 idiots talking to a worse idiot. You know, so it looks like the Democrats are morally superior, but they all basically agree on the same economic framing. You know, it's worse on Fox News. We have to change.
Mm-hmm.
Politicians will not change. Corporations will not change, but we can. And when we decide that we've had enough, when we decide that we need better, and we realize that there's only one way it's going to happen, when we demand it, not vote for it. There's nothing to vote for.
Yeah, I got to be honest, it goes right in line with kind of the purpose of this show is, you know, to talk to activists and things like that who are around the country pushing for progressive policies and whatnot, and lift up these people, because it is up to us. We have to be in the streets. We have to be meeting with our legislators. We have to be running for office ourselves if we have the capacity to do that. There is a lot of, especially when we talk about the, you know, the framing and things like that, is that, you know, the narrative is being shaped in a different way to like the mass media, like through the mass media.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, even shows like this, or, you know, others that are similar, lifting up people who are doing things, they won't have these activists on there. They won't cover that action. You know, these are things that are outside of their sphere of, okay, this is what we will accept. You know, if they cover something like that, they cover it in a negative light. They cover it as if somebody is doing something wrong, or they don't understand it, or whatever it is. They'll pick out the weirdest person in the crowd and talk to them, you know, that kind of thing.
I'm not
you know,
weird enough, apparently.
Yeah. And, you know, I mean, especially we talk about, you know, these, talk about the riots and things that are happening. I mean, not so much riots anymore. You know, we did have a few. I think they had done a study and they said 93% of them are peaceful, you know. And yet when you go on Fox News, and I know Fox News isn't technically a news station, they're really just, you know, for entertainment and stuff like that. But all you hear on that, I hear it when I walk in my parents' house, all you hear is about burning and looting and da-da-da and all this crazy and Antifa and da-da-da. It's like a mythical narrative. Like it doesn't even, like, it has that kernel of truth, you know, whatever. But I think what a lot of us recognize is that the reason why these things are happening is because all of these things that have been building up over the years, that have been building up over the decades, even often over the centuries, all of these things that have been building up and building up. And here's the thing, like MLK said, he said, riots are the language of the unheard. And here's the thing. These are things that people have been talking about and saying, this is not right, this is not right, yet the mainstream media refuses to cover it. So they are essentially unheard. Aside from the 2 or 3 people that they can reach, you know, whatever, their friends and family that they'll sit home and rant to or something like that, they're not being heard. You know what I mean? And so, of course, it's come to this point. Of course, it's come to this point. He was right. When you have no other recourse, this is what happens. It ends up coming to a head and it ends up blowing up. And I think what we really need to be focusing on is what are the things that got us to this point? What are these things? It is the language of the unheard. So when we come to this point, I should think that we should listen, right? I should think that at this point, the logical thing to do is to listen and say, all right, what are your concerns? And, you know, figure out the root causes. What are the root causes? And of course, we don't do that. We have Band-Aid.
This has got to stop. Same old is not going to work. In 2018, the median wage of the U.S. was only $32,000. That means that half the country got to earn more. How much more? Don't know. But half the country earned that or less. Half the country, $32,000 a year. You tell me, how easy is it to make money, to be able to make a living and make it feel like you're actually doing something worthwhile on $32,000 a year? 14%, over 50 million Americans live in poverty. 60% will slide into poverty after an unexpected $500 emergency.
And I think what we're starting to recognize now is that none of these things actually work. None of these things are actually doing what you say they are doing. It's like the Princess Bride. I don't think that word means what you think it means. Like it's not doing anything. And we all know it's not doing anything because we can see it in our own personal lives. You know, Trump can stand up there and talk about how the economy is so great all he wants. But I'm looking at my life and saying like you started out with the GDP versus, you know, what we're actually feeling, what is actually happening in our lives.
Yeah, you know, I mean, every time Trump goes on one of his golfing trips, that contributes to GDP. You know, it's fucking insane. Doesn't do my life any better, you know, but it's improving GDP. So you can definitely count on CNN going, well, GDP went up. You know, they won't tell you why. You know, they'll just simply say that it went up. Same thing with unemployment. You know, they'll talk about unemployment, but they won't break down those numbers for you. They refuse to break down those numbers. They will talk about U3, you know, which is the official unemployment, but they won't talk about U5. They won't talk about U6, which is, you know, incrementally the number of people that are looking for work, you know, but have given up. So they're not counted anymore. It won't. U6 includes that, plus everyone that's actually working part-time wants to get full-time work but can't find it anywhere.
Huge increases in suicides. 35% increase since 2000. Youth suicide is amongst the most egregious. The U.S. has only a 63.4% labor participation rate. When they talk about the unemployment rate, they're talking about U3 unemployment, which is the official unemployment rate, currently at 3.5%. They are never going to break those numbers down for you on the news. To all corporations, to all business, labor is a cost. They don't want to hire you. It is not in their best interest to hire you. They want to replace you as quickly as possible for profits. And for every corporation you can point to that bucks that trend, I can point to 50 others that don't. The trend is clear. They don't want to hire you. So U3 unemployment, when they tell you how wonderful it is, tell them to F off. Okay? Because the U5 number, which includes discouraged workers, no longer counted on the official unemployment rolls, is at 4.3. And they never talk about U6, which also includes part-time and other underemployed people who want regular full-time work and can't find it. It's at 6.3%. 25 million people who either don't have a job, have given up on looking for a job, or are desperate to find some type of stability in their life. The gig economy is ruining this country.
So when they talk about unemployment numbers, look to your screen, say bullshit, break those numbers down. Tell me that it's the U3 number. And if you're going to tell me it's the U3 number, that's only relevant if you talk about the U5 and the U6 number. Then talk about all the tens of millions of people that aren't even counted in U6. Talk about all the homeless and the people that we have already swept aside, that we don't give a shit about, that we bust out of town because it's so painful to look at them on our streets. And it's horrible for our tourist population to be able to come in and see that, I'm sorry, in this country, we don't give a fuck about people unless you can pay.
It reminds me of the poverty rate. The poverty level, like what they said as the poverty level, it's really interesting to me that we have all these programs, and when they do the means testing, they have to say the poverty rate or 1.5 times the poverty level, or 2 times the poverty level, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, well, then what is the purpose of the poverty level? What is the purpose of putting it at that point? Because it doesn't translate to what it takes to, I don't know, have a home. It doesn't translate to what it takes to pay for health care. It doesn't translate to what it takes to actually pay for the essentials, yet we use this number as if it means something. And I'm wondering, what does it mean?
It means bullshit. It's a wonderful thing to say, to allow people that don't want to think too deeply that something means something. They don't care what it means, as long as it's said very seriously by people that wear ties and have wonderful backgrounds and look like they know what they're talking about. And god damn, they're just really cute to look at, and they really seem like they're credible, and I should pay attention to them. I should listen to them. Fuck that shit. Fuck that noise. One of the things that in the little presentation I did, one of the only things that I researched before I put all this stuff together that actually shocked the fuck out of me, there was a survey that suggested that the vast majority of white America think that the wealth problem between white and black America is only about 80% difference. They have an impression that the problem is there, it exists, but black America basically has 80% of the wealth that white Americans are. So we can tinker with the margins with that one, can't we? That's not that big of a problem. Let's not lose any sleep. Let's not rock the boat too much. We can fix that. You know what the actual wealth disparity between white and black America is? It's 7% Black America has 7% the wealth of white America. It's not a problem you can tinker along the margins. It's massive and getting worse all the time.
A 2018 survey found that whites severely underestimate the racial wealth gap. They think that black wealth is about 80% that of whites. Data from the U.S. Census Bureau reveals that black wealth is about 7%. This right here is a large part of our problem, where people think the problem is not good, but it's not that bad. 80%. That's a wonderful passing grade on a high school exam. 80%. We can tinker with the margins and bring that up. It's 7%. This is what we're living with. This is what we're dealing with. For those that need a refresher like I did, median is the middle. The average middle, which means that the median net worth of non-Hispanic white households was $130,800, meaning half of whites earn above that, how much is relative, and the other half earn less. The median net worth of black households was $9,590. Net wealth is defined as the difference between what you own versus what you owe. $9,590. It was $17,530 for Hispanic households. Native Americans. No one ever talks about what we've done to Native Americans over the 400-year history of this country. It's a non-starter, and that is also a huge part of the problem. Has not been measured since 2000, but at that time, the median household net worth was $5,700. This has been going on for a long time.
The median wage of boomers is another thing that kind of shocked me. The median wage of boomers, when they hit 35, which is about the early 1980s, they owned about 21 or 22% of the national wealth. I'm not suggesting the largest generation owning only 20 to 22% is phenomenal, but it's significant. The next generation, my generation, Generation X, when we hit 35, around the 2005, thereabouts, we owned about 12% of the national wealth. Huge difference. Millennials are going to hit the average age of 35 in about 2 or 3 years. They own 3%.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Do you see the trajectory that we're going in? Do you understand why youth are not going to stand up for the same bullshit? They are not blind, they are not stupid, they understand they're getting shafted. We're going back to the 1920s.
Yeah.
Things are getting bad, and they're just getting worse. This is not something you can tinker along the margins and fix. You need direct action. You need direct injections of currency. You need direct injections of employment and opportunity. And the private sector is not going to do it. They don't want to. It's unfair to ask it of them. Are you not sensing, if you go from Fox News to CNN to MSNBC, have you not noticed that by and large, they kind of agree on just about everything? Yes, there's some serious, cultural differences between the two of them. And yes, those are important. But every single one of those areas where they disagree have an economic component that will make the difference between elevating the problem or decreasing the problem.
Hi, I'm Fox San Antonio's Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But we are concerned about the trouble and trend of irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 This is extremely dangerous to our democracy. This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
So everything they say that they care about, the only things they talk about, so it's the only thing your lizard brain hears, you know, identity politics and all these different culture aspects, none of it gets made palpably better because the economics they both agree on, fuck you, the rich are awesome, everyone else can go to hell, so we can still have a show and talk about cultural issues. That's the only thing they want to talk about, knowing full well that they're never going to solve the problem. They don't want to solve the problem because solving the problem would change the lives dramatically of the people up top. And that ain't going to happen unless we change.
Right. And now you think about it, people who are working paycheck to paycheck, people who are trying to raise a family on that, people who are running around. I mean, let's be honest, you're working Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, or whatever your hours are. Then you're picking up your kids from school. Then you're making dinner and you did it. And at the most, you maybe put on a show, you know, the news, the 7 o'clock news or something like that. And, you know, and then you go to bed and do it all again the next day. You know, people don't have a lot of time to dig into all of these things.
Yeah.
They don't have the capacity to be able to pick apart all of essentially the lies, unfortunately. But yes, the lies that you hear on mainstream media.
Yeah. Well, they're being conditioned to listen to these voices.
Right.
Even if they weren't already packaged. I mean, it's a great show. Don't get me wrong. MSNBC, Fox News, all these places.
I'll take your word for it.
Impeccably produced. I haven't seen them in a while, you know, but they are impeccably produced. You know, they look great. These people look like they've got all manner of credentials. And there was a time, you know, like I said, starting from around the 1930s and 40s through to the 1970s and early 80s, when there was at least a massive attempt and push to get media to be responsible. You know, it was all self-imposed. You know, they were, like I said, the fairness doctrine did not really impose these things. They just simply meant you had to give equal time. Did not give a shit what kind of time you gave to either side. Did not mean that it had to be true. We had slander laws, but that's about it. And the only ones, you know, that really cared about the slander laws were the ones who had the money to be able to take something like that to court. So the Donald Trumps of the world, you know, if they slander me, what the fuck am I going to do? I don't have the money to take you to court. Slander Donald Trump or someone like that, and that's it. Your show's done. If that's what they want to have happen, that's power. That's money. But there was an attempt to make media responsible and respectable and honest. Walter Cronkite, the most trusted man in America. And that's the way it was, and all that shit. But all of that started to go away. You know, we started to get, you know, all these different buy-ups, all these different monopolies started showing up. Things we're not supposed to have, but we do. And, you know, government allowed it to happen. Government started, big business started purchasing your government. And we all agree that money in politics is bad, and we all agree why. You know, but why are we accepting that the government that has been purchased is allowing corporations to purchase the media, the ones who are supposed to be telling us what the fuck is going on? Yeah. You know, but the people still have been conditioned to trust these things. Stop. Take a breath. Start thinking about things. You know, what made Donald Trump happen? Could it be that we had media that was captured by the same people that purchased your media, that purchased your government? You know, they purchased the government to pass laws that are very favorable to them and very fuck you to everyone else. And then they purchase the media to make sure that you get one dominant narrative, you know, with slightly different flavors. It's a Neapolitan kind of thing, from chocolate to strawberry, but it all sucks. I never had Neapolitan. I fucking hated that shit when I was a kid. The chocolate sucked, the vanilla sucked, the strawberry sucked. If you put it all together, and you know what you get? You get something that sucks 3 times as much. You know? But that's what we get with our media right now.
Yeah.
You know, it's all basically the same shit, slightly repackaged, each one designed to elicit a slightly different emotional response from a slightly different group of people. But at the end of the day, they're telling you the same shit. The rich are awesome, the poor suck, and we're going to keep doing the same shit because that's what pays our paychecks. You know, you were talking about these people like, you know, shouldn't they have some empathy for us? There are 360 million people in this country. How many people are actually working at these stations? A couple of hundred, maybe a couple of thousand?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that you don't have to look very hard to find people and hire them that already share kind of the same worldview as you. Maybe not exactly, but the ones that don't exactly fit into your worldview, well, hey, here's $35,000 a day. What do you think now? You know, maybe at one point you felt everything that you and I feel. You know, Jimmy Dore, you know, is saying these people sold out, and the only reason I haven't is because no one's paid me enough yet. You know, but that's openly admitting that money can buy just about fucking anything. You know, so we need to start thinking more critically about where you get your news from. And the ones that scream this the loudest are the ones that voraciously watch Rachel Maddow on MSNBC. And if you read Breitbart, you're not thinking critically about the issues or where you get your information from. I'm sorry, where did you get your information from? Who paid for that information? Right. What makes that credible and Breitbart not? And I'm not saying I like Breitbart. I fucking hate him. You know? But to say that one is credible and the other is not, and you don't understand the similarities between them, you're really just feeding your own narrative. You know, you're bending over backwards in the most awesome, awe-inspiring display of yoga to be able to suck your own genitals to make yourself feel better. You know, it's insane.
I can't trip over someone, Republican or Democrat, who does not agree that money in politics is bad. And they will all agree to greater or lesser degrees about why. Because if you give money to someone or to an organization, you are expecting something in return. And the larger you give, the more you expect for that return. We all understand that in politics, we have to end this. Why would you think it's not the same thing in media? The same people that are buying your government, that are buying your politicians, are the same people that are buying your media. You think they do it because they love it? If they love movies and they love TV and they love news broadcasts and they all want to own some? Or are they expecting that they get to be able to control the table and control the narrative and control what stories get out there? Beneficial to them, hostile to anyone that wants to be able to challenge that power.